Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria, and welcome again to Rewind. Here on Rewind, we delve deep into the Al Jazeera documentary archive to bring you some of the best and most influential programs of the past decade, as well as news of what's happened since, or sometimes the story behind the making of the program. Half a century ago, as war raged in Vietnam, an isolated community in the jungles of northern Laos was recruited by the CIA to help fight the Viet Cong. Over 50,000 of the Hmong tribe became part of America's secret army, disrupting communist supply lines along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Thousands of Hmong died in the war, but their problems didn't end when the Americans pulled out. Fearing a crackdown by Laos communist government forces, many fled the country. But some 7,000 stayed behind and continued to fight what they called Red Laos from deep within the jungle where they lived in hiding. In 2008, Al Jazeera's Tony Bertley trekked uphill for more than 2 days through dense forests in search of the Hmong who were left behind. He found a settlement of fewer than 200 people, most of them born after the war, but still living as their ancestors had. He was the first outsider they had seen in 32 years. From 2008, this is The Lost Tribe, Secret Army of the CIA.
An arduous trek through thick jungle, a journey to find a lost tribe. People who've been hidden from the outside world for more than 30 years. Too scared to leave the jungle, but too afraid to stay. People on their knees. They are Hmong, part of America's secret army in the Vietnam War. Now they say they're being hunted by the Laos army, picked off one by one. Time is running out for the Hmong of northern Laos. The dead of night and a rendezvous on the fringe of Asia's densest jungles. These are my guides. They are Hmong, a rugged, tough people used to harsh conditions, but a people living in fear. When we talk, we whisper. When we walk, we try not to create noise, and we try to avoid the danger. The danger is posed by the Laos army. They are everywhere, the Hmong told me, and ambushes are common.
It's about midnight now. We've been walking for about 3 hours up this huge hill, always upwards, upwards. It's a tortuous route for somebody like me, but for these young Hmong fighters, it's a normal walk in the jungle and the sort of care they have to take to avoid the Laos army.
A few welcome hours of sleep beneath the dense canopy, awaking to the chill of an early morning in the highland jungle of northern Laos. Breakfast was a kind of yam, a staple diet for the Hmong, but something I would come to dread in the coming days. After 2.5 days of tough trekking, we reached the outskirts of the village, and a quite unbelievable welcome.
Nice to meet you. I'm Tony from Al Jazeera.
I am
Good.
I am fine.
Thank you.
I was the first outsider anyone had seen for 32 years. For some, it was the first time ever. I didn't know it then, but my visit had taken on a significance I wasn't prepared for. They called me father and gave me a deep respect as someone who could somehow end their plight, give them a new beginning, and for the first time in a long while, give them hope.
This is just the most incredible welcome I've ever had. A dance of welcome to introduce me to the village, and then all these people crying, and they haven't really progressed. Since 1975 they're living the same way that their ancestors did, living in the forest, in the jungle. And it seems like they're abandoned by everybody.
It's hard to appreciate their sense of isolation, the reality of what those lost years mean. You don't have to be in this village very long to understand why there is such a sense of desperation. Children are visibly malnourished. They are dressed in old clothes, barefoot, or just with flip-flops. No medicine, no education, and little food. Almost a bigger fight than with government forces.
Before coming here, nothing actually can prepare you for what you actually see, and that's the really depressing scene. People living on the lowest level of the human ladder, and you look around and you can't see much prospect for improvement. The emotion of these people, they've really come to the end of the line. They believe that if nobody helps them, it is really the end of the line and the end of the Hmong. Something like 580,000 people, Hmong, have died in the last 32 years, they claim. And if it doesn't get a solution, this problem, they reckon that all of the Hmong are going to die here in the jungle.
The area is close to the Vietnam border, and where the Vietnamese communists had their supply lines, it was called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. 60,000 Hmong were recruited by America as part of the CIA's so-called secret army to fight the Viet Cong. But the fight against the Laos communist forces has continued long after the Vietnam War. Today, 155 people live in the community, most of them born after 1975. Vang Chu Chi is the leader of the 7,000 Hmong who he says remain in the jungle. 32 years ago, he was chief of 18,000. Most, he claims, have been killed. People increasingly look to him for a solution to their plight. The leader looks to me. The Hmong revere him. As animists, they worship the land, the air, nature. Incense is used as a means to communicate with their gods. Being a saviour is a big responsibility, but the people kneeling before me were so desperate they would snatch any glimmer of hope, even if it was me.
Well, it's a really strange situation at the moment. I was interviewing the leader, and then suddenly he declared that I was formally being taken hostage until the United Nations could resolve their problem here. I did point out that one journalist like me couldn't resolve anything, certainly not from inside the camp, but this is a first for me being taken hostage by people I've come to try and help. But it does show also the mark of desperation of these people. They're really living a very difficult and hard life, and from one day to the next they don't know how they're going to fare. So I do understand to a certain extent, but I hope they do change their minds.
An unreal situation. Everything else that could change their lives for the better was a long, long way away. But I was here, and the Hmong were getting used to the idea.
Hà cá tôi lên chúng mới tôi chở tôi cho thì tôi bé cho xuống nó qua cho America những gì cho số là những gì cho lên từ là những gì cho thế thì nó mới cũng cho không to của cái tôi ta.
People who've been scarred mentally by their experiences, everyone has been touched. Everyone seems to have lost family or killed, they say, by the Laos army. Last year, the leader told me 54 of his people were murdered by the military, and there are physical scars as well. Chasio, 72, he claims 10 children and his wife were killed by the army, and then he stepped on a mine planted on a route villagers took to get food.
Mò cờ đó mu chỉ to đấy nè, trên chỉ tụ pa nó mà, tụ pa nó mà nị, mà, nó mu chỉ to đây luôn, mu đây chỉ, tí nó té tà gì, mu to, chỉ tụ lông nó bắt tơi trong này nó này, gì còn nó, chỉ mu to nên chứ lộ.
My Song is 59 and a grandmother. She has lost 5 sons, all shot dead, she says, by Laotian soldiers. She shows the scars of bullet wounds suffered when she went to dig for food.
như chỉ mua tiền thì đâu thì mở như chỉ nó lô lì mà chỉ mua vào mua chơi nhau đi mà thọ lô thọ chở rô chở mò có mua cho xe lô.
This is the food that people survive on here. It's the root of a plant, and you have to dig down about a metre in order to get it. It tastes something like potato. It's what we lived on for nearly 3 days in the jungle getting here. But the surprise was that this is what they live on every single day here. If they're lucky, they get 3 meals a day. If not, it's about 2.
Chỉ nhẹ nó thì khi mà cha bên chỉ muốn nó.
She doesn't like
By the light of a campfire, they sing in hushed tones and dance the steps of their ancestors who moved from Mongolia to China and then to Laos. They try to retain what little culture they can and scrape by in a harsh environment that is now their world, one that with every generation is slowly ebbing away. Dawn is always the most vulnerable time with the Hmong in the jungle, the time when the Laos army is most likely to strike.
Morning.
A wash, more a splash really, is a luxury. The Hmong would be too exposed living near rivers.
This is for me to take.
The leader was still insisting I stay, but he'd written a letter which he wanted me to deliver personally to the United Nations in New York.
That's my promise.
They are tough, resilient people, which is why the CIA used them for 10 years during the Vietnam War. Just a handful now remain in the jungle of northern Laos. And finally, I get to meet some.
I am soldier means CIA.
CIA?
CIA. Mà cú cha phò nó na. Chỉ yo phò à chỉ na, yo phò được nè, chỉ nè nâng America đó. Mà ga tua đồ bê có bê ba nè, nè non dây cho sòng khan nữa.
The Hmong feel the communist government in Laos, they call it the Red Laos, is punishing them for fighting for the Americans. Kia Yang was a young man when he fought for the Americans against the communist Vietnamese. Now he feels abandoned.
Bảo tua pe, quan tới tháo bộ tư là nhiều chỉ bằng,
When you're watching the slow death of a people, it's hard to know what to do or even what to say. I tried to reassure them. I gave them what I had in my pack, medical supplies and food. The first time the younger Hmong had seen ham and cheese.
Take one piece.
Yeah, could you take one piece for him?
It's different, huh?
Sheepishly, they came forward for a taste. First the men, then the women, some a little confused about what they were being offered. Then the children inched forward, wary and wondrous at the same time. As the time passed, the Hmong's belief in me as a saviour didn't diminish, quite the contrary. They feted me, killed one of the few chickens they had in my honour, and lit candles as a blessing to bestow on me good luck. They tied strings on my wrist to ward off the bad spirits. They knelt before me in acts of homage. It was all so overwhelming.
This has been quite a moving experience. I've never had anything like this happen to me before, and there's some great belief that I can suddenly change around their fortunes, that I can single-handedly make the United Nations come in and do something. They're treating me like some kind of god here. And I haven't got the heart to tell them that so many other people around the world in so many other dire situations have been let down before by the international community.
A chicken, no matter how small and anorexic, has good luck signs. The wishbone on this one suggested good omens, maybe my release. For the Hmong, the jungle of northern Laos is a place of nightmares and dreams. B's 18 years old. He married at 15 and has 2 children. He dreams of studying music and taking his children to a park. The melancholy sound of B's guitar made me think about my hopes and my increasing desire to leave.
I've been here for about 5 days now, and I haven't had a proper wash in that time. I live largely on the roots from these plants. I've hardly had the sun on my face because the Hmong have to live in places like this, which is giving plenty of cover in case that the aerial reconnaissance of the Laotian army spots them. And I'm finding it really tough, and I've got to go. I see these people around me, and every day I see the children. It makes me think of my children, my family and my life, and I realise that I can't stick this much longer, so I really have to go.
After a week, a rumour spread that the translator and I were about to leave. It created panic and angry scenes.
This is absolutely unbelievable. All these people, all these women have packed up their baskets, their clothes, their possessions, and they want to come with me. They want to walk out today, walk out of the forest. And it's civilization, but I keep trying to explain to them that I've got the Laos army out there and I can't guarantee their safety, quite the reverse. It's bizarre.
A heated argument about whether to stay or to go with me. The mood of panic had come from nowhere and disappeared as quickly as the Hmong reconciled themselves with reality and the battle for survival. And people walked for days from surrounding villages to plead with me for help. This man had lost all his family and he amputated his own hand after being badly wounded. He began to sing a song about the plight of the Hmong people, about persecution and injustice, about survival and hope. His haunting words followed me as my release became a reality, and the leader blessed me for the journey ahead. I turned one last time and I wondered what would happen to the Hmong of northern Laos and how many would live long enough to enjoy peace.
That was The Lost Tribe, Secret Army of the CIA. Well, we're joined now from London by the filmmaker, Tony Birtley. And Tony, why don't you start by telling us why you went looking for Hmong in the first place?
Well, I suppose I've got a bucket list of stories that I've always wanted to cover. I was too young to cover the Vietnam War. It's something that really interested me, but a spin-off from that was the Hmong. So I'd kept in contact with what was happening to them as much as I could. And then there came an opportunity. There was a connection that I learnt of in California, a Hmong community there, and I contacted them, and they put me in contact with the Hmong community in Laos and arranged for me to go and see them. So it was something that I really wanted to do. It's a great desire to cover that because it's one of those I think very important stories, but one that is overlooked because it's so difficult to do.
Just how challenging was it actually reaching the Hmong? I mean, did you know you'd be putting your life in danger?
Well, there are always concerns because the people in California made me quite aware of the dangers from the Laos army. They said that the people in the jungle were being hunted by the Laos army, they were being killed. So I had to be prepared for that sort of thing. I wasn't really prepared for the physical side of it because actually getting there was physically challenging. I wasn't perhaps the fittest at the time, but as soon as I started walking, it was a monumental hike for nearly 3 days over really, really large hills in darkness sometimes. And I was due to go with a cameraman who was carrying a bit of weight, and when he learnt about the rigours of the hike, and the potential dangers, he decided not to go. So therefore, I took the camera myself, which I've done in the past, and it wasn't a problem for me. But as I say, I found it challenging. He would have found it impossible, to be honest.
Tony, you were seen as something of a saviour, but then you were also taken hostage. How did you cope psychologically?
Well, I'm a tough old dog, so it didn't really get me down too much, to be honest. It was never a case of my life being in danger. I didn't fear these people. I understood their desperation and they were using whatever bargaining tool they could.
Nevertheless, Tony, I guess this is one of those stories that really stays with you long after you've left.
Well, it was a profound experience because I never really expected to find what I did. I didn't understand from all my research the deep fear and the deprivation of these people. So to actually go there, from the moment I entered their camp, they were on their hands and knees praying and crying, and this was not just to greet me. It was not a show, because in the course of the next week I saw this on a regular basis, people crying, people pleading with me, people saying they've got no hope, they're all going to die. They all had stories about, their loved ones being killed, they said, by the Laotian army. The fact that they were on the run, they were sick, they were needy, and they had very little.
You also made a promise to take this up with the UN. Did you manage that?
I went to New York, I went to the United Nations, I wrote to the Secretary General, I told everything I saw, I gave a link to the documentary I did. Absolutely nothing happened. When I raised it in a press briefing, to the UN press people, they looked at me like, yeah, and what? It didn't register on the social consciousness of the United Nations or in fact the world. So I feel a tremendous sense of failure, and I suppose that's why the images have stayed with me so long, longer than some of the other horrible things that I've covered.
Tony Birtley, great talking to you. Thanks for joining us on Rewind.